9:12 p.m. A light rain drizzled. A small gas station nestled quietly off Highway 83, its dim yellow streetlights casting a pale glow over the dark, wet asphalt. Not a single car passed by. The breeze was barely noticeable, soft and silent, but enough to make the glass windows tremble slightly. A brand-new silver Honda Accord pulled up at pump number 6. The engine stopped. The headlights dimmed. From the driver's seat stepped a black woman round 31 years old, medium build, the fatigue of a long day etched into her every movement. Alicia Moore, a night shift nurse at River Hill General, had just completed a grueling 12-hour shift in the emergency room. Her dark blue scrubs still showed water stains along the sleeves. The name tag on her chest swayed gently with every step. Her face was beautiful, yet worn with dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights, her coiled hair tied into a high bun, and her lips pressed into a tight line that said more than any words could. She let out a quiet sigh and pressed the fuel cap release. Her movements were second nature, as if this moment had been repeated thousands of times. This wasn't unusual. This was what people called just another ordinary day. But sometimes it's ordinary days where disasters begin. Inside the car, her son Malik Moore, 10 years old, sat silently in the back seat. He wore a grey hoodie, a tablet clutched in his hands, and a cloth mask covered half his face. His breathing was short, not from the cold, but from congenital asthma. His blue inhaler lay next to him like a weapon he always had to carry. Always ready, always near. Alicia tapped gently on the window. "I'm going in to get a bottle of water." "2 minutes, okay." Malik nodded, pulling out one earbud. "I'm doing my spelling. Doors are locked." "Good boy." She smiled a small smile, not quite happy, but enough to go on. Enough to lie to herself that today had passed without trouble. But she didn't see them. 2 police officers sat in a patrol car parked diagonally across the gas station. The headlights were off. Only the faint glow from their phone screens lit their faces. In his early 40s, Officer Riley Banks stared with a dull but scrutinizing gaze. Officer Jason Miller, younger buzz-cut, cracked his knuckles repeatedly like someone waiting for a reason to act. "Look at that," Miller sneered, sipping coffee. "Honda Accord, custom rims, scrubs. You think that's her car?" Banks chuckled under his breath. "No way. Someone lent it to her. Let's check it out." They opened the car doors and stepped out. Not rushed, not tense, just the terrifying confidence of men who believed no one would ever stop them. They then walked toward Alicia, the woman who had just spent 12 hours saving lives, just as she pulled the gas nozzle from the pump. Everything was still quiet. But this kind of quiet was no longer safe. Rain tapped steadily on the roof of the car. Alicia looked up, her eyes catching the figures approaching 2 white officers, walking casually, but their eyes had already begun to strip her bare from a distance. Instinct straightened her spine. Her hand gripped the gas nozzle, but her gaze sharpened from exhaustion to alertness. Situations like this weren't unfamiliar. She had heard stories. But tonight the story had walked into her own life. "Good evening," Alicia spoke first, her voice soft but steady, not overly friendly, not hostile, just measured. Officer Riley Banks was the first to respond. "Is this your car?" He didn't look her in the eye, just glanced at her hands, her wrists, her shoes. Not searching for weapons, just calculating whether she looked like someone who deserved the car she drove. Alicia nodded gently. "Yes. Bought it last month. All the papers are in order. New plates." She reached into her scrub pocket and pulled out her wallet, vehicle registration, and driver's license. Her movements were deliberate, slow, like a dance rehearsed thousands of times, precise, proper and above suspicion. Officer Jason Miller had walked around to the back of the car, pretending to check the plates. There was a report about a silver Accord like this, he said, not even glancing at Alicia. Just doing our job. I understand. She handed over the documents. Banks took them but didn't look, just let them dangle loosely in his hand like an unnecessary prop. Where do you work, Riverhill General? I'm a night shift nurse. Really? Banks tilted his head, squinting. You don't look like someone who could afford this car. Alicia blinked. Once, then again, not from surprise but from familiarity. That line, she'd heard it before, at the grocery store, when paying with a credit card, at the ATM, at the DMV, always the same gaze, the same voice, the same implication that didn't need to be said aloud for everyone to understand. In the car, Malik had stopped working. He looked up, eyes scanning through the glass. The gas station lights reflected in his pupils, and he saw his mother, her back stiff, shoulders tensed, hand frozen. He knew something wasn't right. Malik pulled out his phone from his backpack. His fingers moved fast. Mom's in trouble. 2 cops. Gas station. HY83. Come now. To Uncle Jordan. Sent. Then he opened the voice recording app, pressed record, slipped the phone beneath his hoodie. His heart was pounding, but he didn't shake. Outside, Alicia kept her voice steady. Is there anything else you need? You have my documents. I haven't done anything wrong. Anyone else in the car? Banks asked. My son. He's 10. He's doing his homework. Miller leaned closer, face nearly pressed to the passenger window, shielding his eyes to peer in. 10, huh? Looks older. That boy in there, is he yours? Alicia nodded. Yes, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't scare him. In that exact moment, she saw the sign posted on the convenience store beside the gas station. Security camera out of order, under maintenance. Her chest tightened. Her heart skipped a beat. No cameras, no proof, no strangers are watching to intervene. Just 2 officers with authority and 1 black woman alone with her son. Banks smiled. But it wasn't a kind smile. Looks like it's just us here tonight. His voice was low, nearly a whisper, as if testing how scared she was. Alicia didn't respond, but inside she began calculating. Tone, gaze, distance, exit routes. Not because she was afraid, but because years in the ER had taught her this. When bad things happen, they often come from the people meant to protect you. Malik was still in the car, ears listening, eyes wide open. Underneath his hoodie, the red light from his phone's recording app blinked steadily. A silent witness is being born second by second, and then all that remained was silence, heavy, suffocating, like the air itself was waiting for something to collapse. Alicia felt the air around her thicken, like an invisible block of concrete. Every second that passed, the 2 officers still did nothing, and that more than anything made it all the more dangerous. They didn't shout. They didn't draw their weapons. They gave no commands. They stood there closer than necessary, their eyes no longer mocking but cold. Riley Banks finally spoke, his voice low and heavy. You got anything in the car we should know about? Alicia replied without a hint of panic. My son. His name is Malik. He's in the back seat. And he's scared. She spoke slowly, clearly, as if every word were an anchor holding her composure in place. Miller glanced through the window again, smirking. 10 years old. Could be 13. Hard to say. That boy yours, I already told you, Alicia said, her voice dropping, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't use that tone in front of my son. A breeze drifted past, carrying a swirl of brittle leaves beneath the car, the sign reading "Security Camera Temporarily Disabled." Under maintenance glinted once more under the station lights, as if reminding her that every move from here on out would go unseen. Inside the car, Malik held his breath. His hand still clutched the inhaler, though he hadn't used it yet. He knew this feeling, the tightening in his chest, like a rope pulling tighter and tighter. Still, he waited. He tried not to cough, tried not to tremble. The phone under his hoodie kept recording, its red light blinking softly. No one but the boy knew that a record was being made, second by second. Alicia looked toward Banks. "I'd like my documents back." Her hand remained on the gas nozzle. She didn't step back. She didn't yield. Banks said nothing, but after a pause he didn't hand the papers back. He threw them right at her chest like they were trash. The documents fell into the puddle at her feet, edges soaking quickly. "That's how you talk to officers. I'm speaking as a citizen," Alicia replied, never breaking eye contact. Miller moved in closer, circling to the other side of the car. "You keep staring at the car. Got something to hide?" "Worried we'll find something," Alicia answered instantly without pause. "I'm looking at my son. He's scared. And you're the reason." Inside the car, Malik had begun to tremble. His breathing quickened. His eyes turned red. His grip on the inhaler grew weak. He tried to suppress a cough, but his lungs began to flare. Each cell is screaming for oxygen. He turned to the seat beside him, grabbed the inhaler and tried to press. But his fingers slipped. Once, twice, not enough strength, not enough breath, not enough calm. "Mom," he whispered, barely audible. "I can't breathe." Alicia heard it. She spun around. "He's having an asthma attack. I need to get his inhaler." No. Banks snapped. "Not while we're talking." Then he slapped the phone out of Alicia's hand as she tried to call. The phone hit the ground hard, its back cover flying off. "That's my personal property," she shouted, stepping toward it. Banks blocked her path, one arm pushing her shoulder against the car. "Don't play games." Miller lunged from behind, grabbed her wrist, and twisted it behind her back. Resisting, he called out loudly, "I'm restraining Alicia," screamed Malik, inhaler. "Grab it now." Inside the car, the boy could no longer hear clearly. All sound had become muffled, distant. He curled forward, clutching his chest, eyes wide in desperation for a breath. "He's faking it," Miller growled, "putting on a show to distract us." Then he yanked open the car door, lunged inside, and smacked the inhaler from the boy's hands. "No kid with asthma fakes it that well," he shouted. Malik collapsed, his tiny arms wrapping around his throat. His eyes fluttered. His heart pounded erratically. Alicia cried out, "You're killing my son." With the last strength she broke free from, Miller ran to the car and dove toward the floorboard. She grabbed the inhaler and placed it in her son's hand. "Press it, baby." Now he did. Once, then again. His breathing started to return, not steady but possible. At that moment, Miller yanked Alicia back, dragging her from the car. "You just made it worse. That's a serious offense." Alicia didn't respond, not because she was afraid, but because she was furious. So furious her lips trembled, but her eyes stayed wide open, unflinching, defiant. Her arms were wrenched behind her, slammed against the freezing metal of the car. She gritted her teeth. The click of the handcuffs rang in her ears like a countdown to a mistake that couldn't be undone. Inside the car, Malik kept coughing, the inhaler in hand, but his breaths were still ragged. His face had gone pale, eyes stretched wide in a panic that didn't come from illness, but from the cruel realization that no one around him believed his pain. "Think you're smart, huh?" Miller snarled, tightening the cuffs. "Your kid's just like you. Both of you think you can outsmart cops." Banks stood at the car door looking in at Malik like he was some strange object. This kid got one of those faces you can't stand, the type that learns to talk early, but all in the language of victims. Alicia shuddered. Shame and rage rose together, choking her throat. But she didn't scream. She didn't beg. Her eyes remained wide, focused, blazing. She silently repeated 3 words. "Don't go down." And then, silence. The first sound was the screech of tires on wet pavement. Then the brakes slammed. Next, headlights sliced through the bleak gas station like a blade through dusk. A black SUV came to a stop just meters away. The door opened. Out stepped a tall man, broad-shouldered, calm, impeccably dressed in a dark, wrinkle-free suit. He didn't rush, he didn't flinch. He scanned the scene once. Once was enough. Jordan Carter, mayor of the city, Alicia's younger brother, Malik's uncle, had arrived. And he hadn't brought apologies. He had brought authority. No one said a word. Both officers instinctively stepped back. Banks reached for his belt and his hand brushed his gun, but froze as Jordan raised something gleaming from a black leather case, a gold badge shining under the gaslight. "Mayor Jordan Carter," he said, his voice deep and clear. "Take your hands off my sister. Now. Right. Now. No sirens. No dispatch orders." But the entire gas station turned to stone. Miller looked at Banks. Banks looked at Jordan, and their eyes slid back to Alicia. It was as if for the first time they realized the woman they had shoved against the car was the mayor's sister. She was resisting. Banks mumbled. "We were just..." No, Jordan cut him off, voice cold as steel. "She was surviving. You were violating every protocol in the book." He pulled out his phone, pressed a button. Moments later, 2 patrol units rolled in from the city, lights flashing, no sirens. "Chief dispatched us to the scene," said an officer stepping out. "We're under orders from higher up, awaiting direct instruction." Jordan nodded. "Disarm and suspend both officers." Immediately, Banks shouted, "What the hell? You're protecting your family. I'm the mayor. You're the man who just assaulted a nurse and abused your badge in front of a child. You don't get to ask questions." Miller tried to speak, but Jordan's gaze locked on him. No yelling, no threats, just one look. And the whole atmosphere shifted. Another officer stepped forward, calm but firm, unbuckled Banks's holster, and recited the suspension protocol. Banks growled through clenched teeth. She should have stayed home if she didn't want to be questioned. Jordan didn't blink. "That sentence just finalized your suspension. Say another word, and I'll personally file the charges." In the distance, an ambulance pulled in. Its back doors flew open. An older nurse with silver hair and sharp eyes rushed toward Malik. "Acute respiratory distress. Mother's BP is unstable. Both need to be admitted now." Jordan nodded. He knelt beside Alicia, his eyes softening. "You're safe now. I'm riding with you. Nothing worse will happen." Malik was placed on a stretcher, his small hand clinging tightly to his mother's, as if letting go would make everything vanish. Jordan bent down, gently brushing the boy's hair. "You did well, Malik. You just saved your mom." Alicia said nothing. She only looked at her brother, with the eyes of someone who had stood at the edge but survived. As the ambulance doors closed, she looked out the back window, toward the place where it had all happened. There stood Banks in handcuffs. Miller sat on the curb, his face buried in his palms. And Jordan remained there, shoulders squared, gaze unwavering. Not a hero, but a reminder justice still has a shape. And tonight, it had arrived in time. Room 4 on the 3rd floor of River Hill City Hall had never been this silent. No rustling of paper, no idle pen taps, only the faint hum of the air conditioning and distant sounds beyond the glass windows, a car horn, footsteps, and a city beginning to wake, beneath the weight of something it could no longer ignore. Alicia sat still, her arm wrapped in fresh white gauze beneath the sleeve of a loose shirt. Her face was calm, but her jaw clenched like stone. She hadn't come to recount what had happened, she had lived it. At this point, no explanation could carry more weight than her presence. Malik sat beside her, neatly dressed in a white button-up and a small jacket. His eyes were tired from the overnight hospital stay, but no longer dazed. He scanned the room, studying the adults as if assessing who was telling the truth, and was waiting for their turn to speak. Across the table stood Mayor Jordan Carter, no longer in a suit. He wore a dark sweater sleeves, slightly rolled his face, somber eyes shadowed but razor-sharp. In his hand was a tablet. On its screen, voice memos, 13 minutes 21 seconds. He looked around the room and pressed play. The static at the beginning of the recording cracked through the silence like a slap. Then Alicia's voice, "Good evening. Is this your car?" "Yes, all paperwork's in order. You don't look like someone who could afford a car like this." No one in the room spoke. The recording continued, the soft rattle of the car window, Malik's coughing at first light, then heavy. Banks's voice scraped through the speakers. "He's faking the asthma. Then is that your real kid?" A gasp, the sound of the inhaler hitting the car floor. Alicia's scream was not dramatic, not embellished, just the raw scream of a mother watching her child suffocate while unable to help, and then a loud slap, sharp and thunderous. The room held its breath. Jordan paused the recording. His eyes stayed on the screen. His voice came low but cut like glass. "We have surveillance footage from the store. The owner restarted the system this morning. The scene matches the audio exactly." Every statement from the two officers was false. An elderly attorney near the door narrowed his eyes. "And the boy sent a message before it happened." "Correct," Jordan replied. 10 years old, and he had the clarity to do that. Jordan turned to Malik. The boy met his gaze, not proud, not scared. "Just steady. I just knew something was wrong. My mum didn't seem like herself." The city's communications director entered the room with a stack of documents. "Mr. Carter," she said, "the media wants to know if this is a personal matter. They found out the victim is the mayor's sister." Jordan nodded. "Then make it clear this isn't about family." He stood and adjusted the microphone. "This is about truth. About the right to exist without suspicion because of your skin or your job. About a 10-year-old who hit record because he didn't believe anyone would stand up for his mother." Alicia didn't speak, but her eyes rested on Jordan, not as a brother, but as someone holding the flame in the middle of a storm. 2 hours later, the press conference began in a small room on the first floor. No flashy backdrop, no flag, no gimmicks. Jordan stepped up and placed both hands on the table like laying a line in the sand. "Last night, 2 city police officers assaulted a civilian, a nurse, a mother without just cause. They mocked her, used force, and endangered her 10-year-old son. They assumed there were no cameras, no witnesses. They were wrong." Behind him, a large screen lit up. The audio and video played in sync. Alicia shoved into the car. Malik screaming, "Mom, I can't breathe." Then a hand swats away his inhaler. The room went silent, as if everyone had joined the boy in holding their breath. Then the storm hit, questions, rapid keystrokes, camera flashes. But Jordan said just one thing to close: "This is not the end. This is the beginning." 3 weeks later, Courtroom 2 at the River Hill Courthouse was packed, not with reporters, not with people just there to watch, but with those who had once been silenced. Nurses in scrubs, Mothers with children, bus drivers are on lunch breaks, janitors with thermoses, retired cops. Everyday people, no slogans, no signs, just presence, full, quiet, waiting. Alicia sat in the front row, her left arm in a brace, her face calm to the point of cold. Malik was beside her wearing a white shirt and a small tie loosened at the collar. He was no longer afraid, just focused as if he weren't there as a victim, but as a witness to what's right. Across the room sat officers Riley Banks and Jason Miller. No badges, no gun belts, just two angry men in thin jail uniforms. Judge Rowe entered. The gavel struck, court is in session. The prosecutor spoke. Today we don't need to reconstruct the scene. We don't need experts. We need to press play. The courtroom screen lit up. First scene, Alicia says, "Good evening." Then Malik's whisper, "Mom, I can't breathe." No one moved. The sound of the wind, rain. The inhaler was clattering on the car floor, a mother screaming pinned against a hood, cuffs clinking. Not one line was scripted, not 1 second imagined. The defense flailed. Banks' lawyer said Alicia was a bit combative, showed confrontational behavior. Miller's lawyer claimed Malik had been coached to escalate the situation. They asked the court to dismiss the recording, calling it legally unverified. Judge Rowe looked directly at them. A 10-year-old recorded sent a message, then had an asthma attack. All of it is logical, none of it coerced. And you want to throw that out. They said nothing. When Alicia took the stand, she didn't cry, didn't sigh, didn't tremble. She sat upright facing the jury. "I'm not afraid for myself. I'm afraid that if I hadn't grabbed that inhaler in time, my son would be dead. Not because of asthma, but 2 men in this room decided he didn't deserve to breathe." No one stirred. Jurors looked down. A woman in the 3rd row clutched her daughter tighter. The store's technician took the stand, an elderly white man in a striped shirt. He kept it simple. The store camera came back online that morning. "I forgot to take the maintenance sign down." The footage auto-uploaded. All timestamps match the recording. Then the final nail is a timeline aligned to the second. No more denials, no more excuses. Judge Rowe signaled the jury to deliberate. 25 minutes later, they returned. No surprises. We, the jury, find the defendants, Riley Banks and Jason Miller, guilty on all counts: excessive use of force, abuse of authority, endangering the life of a minor, false reporting, racial bias in the execution of duty. Rowe nodded and closed the file. The court permanently strips both defendants of their law enforcement status and remands them to custody pending criminal sentencing. No applause, no cheers, just the sound of an exhale, like a city finally releasing a breath it had held for years. One 10-year-old boy, a single mother, and a 13-minute recording had made a system bow its head. After the trial, Alicia took Malik's hand and stepped out. The people didn't swarm them. They stood in a stretched line, no chants or shouting. They just stood, witnessing. A young nurse gently tapped Alicia's shoulder. "Thank you for not staying silent." Alicia turned to her son. "Not me. You were the one who didn't stay silent." Outside Riverhill Courthouse, the sky held no rain, but the air was colder than any morning before. The crowd remained. No chants, no signs, no shouting. They stood shoulder to shoulder, eyes fixed on the building, as if looking into a mirror held up to a system that had ignored them for far too long. No one led. No one called out slogans, but everyone knew they were witnessing something far beyond the scope of a single trial. Alicia and Malik entered that sacred silence through the courthouse's main glass doors. A few people raised their hands not to wave but to honor. An elderly woman in a janitor's uniform walked up quietly, placed a warm, silent hand on Alicia's shoulder, and said, "You helped us see? No one can pretend anymore." At the plaza's edge, Jordan Carter, no longer in a tailored suit, just a grey jacket and khakis, approached Malik and handed him a small, square object encased in glass. A police badge rusted on one corner, the edge slightly scorched, as if once thrown into fire. "I used to be a cop," Jordan said softly. "Left the force 15 years ago when I realized the uniform doesn't protect everyone the same. I kept this to remind myself every day, but I think you should keep it now." Malik took it, unsure whether to smile or bow. Alicia nodded gently. "Keep it, son. Not because it's a symbol of power, but because it's a reminder justice doesn't arrive alone. People must name it and hold it in the right hands." 3 weeks later, the Sunday morning paper bore a bold headline, "Malik Moore Act Passed. Mandatory body cam law approved citywide." The new law required all police officers must wear body cams in every civilian interaction. Cameras cannot be turned off or removed without direct authorization. Disabling footage or falsifying reports is now a criminal offense. And an independent civilian oversight council is established with Alicia Moore appointed as honorary advisor. On her first day attending the council meeting, Alicia wore a simple white blouse. No makeup, no performance of authority. She didn't want the title, but she showed up because she understood one truth. Change doesn't wait until we're ready. It comes when there's nowhere left to stand. Malik returned to school. He was quieter, taller, eyes deeper. Some classmates avoided him. Some stared. Some whispered, "What was it like?" Back then, he shrugged, loud. One day a teacher asked, "Do you want to be a police officer when you grow up?" He answered without hesitation, "No, I want to be a doctor." But I'll never forget what I saw. One late at night, Alicia was inserting an IV into a newly admitted patient, an elderly black woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen a lot. Suddenly, the woman gripped Alicia's hand firmly. "You made it a little easier to breathe," she whispered. "For any nurse walking the night shift who looks like you." Alicia nodded. No more words were needed, because sometimes justice isn't a verdict. It isn't a clean resolution. It's a crack in the concrete. A breath of air finally breaks through, a space for others to walk without having to lower their heads. The River Hill Municipal Building basked in soft golden sunlight on a pale Wednesday afternoon. No more crowds, no more cameras, no more hashtags flashing by on phone screens. Just a city continuing, and people walking forward slowly but without turning back. The newly formed Civilian Oversight Council swearing in took place in a small hall at the rear of City Hall without red carpets or background music. Alicia Moore stood to the left of the honor table, not in a suit. Her nurse's blouse was neatly folded over her arm. She wasn't there to impress anyone. She was there to be present. The council director handed her a folder. "You're not a legal advisor, you're a real person. This city needs people who know what pain feels like, not just what's printed in books." Alicia accepted it, nodded once, not from pride, from duty. Elsewhere in the city, Malik Moore sat in his high school library. Sunlight sliced through the windows, landing across an open biology book. He didn't carry the badge in his backpack. He kept it on his nightstand in the glass case, an unspoken reminder, not all power is just. But no one should be denied the right to breathe. A curious classmate leaned over and asked, "Do you think it's all over?" Malik shrugged. "No. But now people know where it began." That night after her shift, Alicia came home. The hallway light still flickered. The building still had no elevator. But she climbed 3 flights every night without complaint or strain. Malik was asleep. The nightlight cast his slender shadow on the wall. Alicia walked into the room, pulled the blanket back over his shoulder, and sat by his bed. She didn't speak. She just placed her hand over his small one, still holding the familiar glass frame. Riley Banks and Jason Miller waited for their final sentencing elsewhere in the city. No uniforms, no badges, only summons letters, case files, and the slow fade of public memory. No one screamed at them. No one demanded revenge. Justice doesn't need to shout to exist. It only needs to be seen. 1 week later at Riverhill General Hospital, Alicia gave medication to a newly admitted patient, another black woman with grey hair and eyes still clear. The woman took Alicia's hand. "I saw you on TV. I don't remember everything. But I remember one thing. You didn't bow your head. And that boy of yours, he taught this whole city how to listen." Alicia smiled for real this time, not out of politeness, not to prove anything, but because something had changed. Not long after a small sign was planted outside the gas station off Highway 83. Not a memorial, not dark in color, just a metal plaque with simple engraving. "At this place on a night no one noticed, a child pressed record." And from one recording, a city began to learn how to listen. This story has no ending, because real change doesn't arrive with a triumph. It begins with a crack, a small gap just wide enough for light to slip in. And sometimes that's all it takes to begin again.